Tuesday night once again, and we're back with another episode of Goal, Horns, and Fight Songs. I am Mike at Merrill04 on Twitter, and again, Wes is joining me. Uh, you had a pretty fun weekend for your team, and same for mine. It was pretty interesting weekend overall in college hockey, especially in the NCHC.
Everything went about as well as it could have gone as a Western fan this weekend.
I think there's only one more result that you would have liked to have been a little bit different, and that would be Uh, I would have liked the same Friday night's game between UMD and Denver, but that's about as good as we were going to expect uh, from from both teams.
I mean, literally everything went right that we needed to. Like, yeah, I mean, we could have definitely used the extra win if Minnesota Duluth could have picked one up, but we are in range of catching Denver, who we play this weekend. We got a little bit of room between us and our former companions in second place in the NCHC standings. So, all in all, it was a great weekend for at least Western hockey. Only team to sweep a series. So, definitely happy about that. Well, as far as all 6 points, conference points being picked up, we were the only ones to accomplish that. Miami helped us out by stealing one and at least forcing one overtime game. North Dakota helped us out a lot in keeping St. Cloud State from picking up more than 2 points or 3 points. What's it that they had? Yeah.
3. Yep, they would have had 3
because they got the shootout win in the second game. So
yeah, and then I mean we'll talk about it a little later, but interesting stretch here for St. Cloud.
They have not been performing the way we would have expected them to after being knocked off as the number one team in the country.
No, they definitely have not.
And that's kind of the most surprising thing. We did know that number one spot is definitely a dangerous spot to be in. You're going to get everyone's A game. But I think since being swept by you guys, they have not won a game in regulation. I don't even know if they've finished a game in regulation since losing both games to you guys. I think all 4 games have gone to at least overtime.
Yeah, and I was thinking this is where we could start, and you are correct. All 4 games since the sweep against UMD have gone to overtime. They went overtime both games with Miami. They were off last weekend, and now they go to overtime. And there was a shootout in, I think, both of them against Miami, and then there was a shootout on Saturday. So they've gone to 3 shootouts out of their last 4 games after being swept by UMD. It's kind of fascinating to me how they can go from ascending to the number one team in the country and then fall not so far where they're getting swept consistently, but the fact that the bottom 2 teams in the conference have taken them to overtime or a shootout. And that does prove that it's really tough to win in this conference, especially in regulation. But it also it makes me lose really any faith now that St. Cloud has what it takes, because I said it last week. This was going to prove to me, are they back on the horse or are they still struggling? And they're still struggling.
Yeah, they're struggling hard, and I mean they don't have any easier of a weekend really in Omaha. Omaha's been one of those teams that's been competing for they've clinched home ice. Western, Denver, and Omaha have all clinched home ice that can finish no worse than 4th in the standings. St. Cloud has yet to reach that plateau, so I mean there's a potential that they could still fall out and not host a home series, playing as well as they did to start the season, and with the goaltending that they were getting from their split time crease guys.
And I don't even know if it's necessarily their goaltending, because you look at the scores that they have had. 2-2, I mean 4-3, yeah, but then it was 1-1 in Saturday's game against Miami, and then 3-3, but going to the 10-round shootout or whatever
Yeah.
on Friday. I don't necessarily think it's a goaltending problem. I think it's more of the guys can't put it in the back of their net.
I mean, it's definitely that they're not getting the offense to go along with the offensive or the defensive strength of their goaltending. I mean, their conference goals for and against stats are 70 goals for, 53 goals against. So I mean, they're the highest of those not in the or of teams that are currently sitting at home ice. They've given up the most goals, and they have scored the second least. Denver and Western have scored the most in conference goals, and Omaha has the closest differential of home ice teams. So I mean, I don't know what essentially their deal is, but they're they're struggling with the conference schedule. They're 10-7-3 or 10-7-3 in the conference, 18-9-3 overall. So it's definitely been a conference that has given them issues, and I mean, it's a conference that's going to give anybody issues, really. But we're starting to see those better teams separate themselves in some of these, and maybe it is a little bit of just not having a number one goaltender that you're relying on and knowing that he's going to be back there every game that you can build on. It's maybe sitting a little bit too long gave a loss to Caster that he might not have had if he was playing every single game, or vice versa.
Yeah, and with their conference record, their overall record compared to their conference record, it's not like they're playing a cake schedule for their non-conference.
No, no.
I mean, the only one really would be St. Thomas, and I mean, they'll get there. They're playing a little better this year than they did last year, but they're playing some tough opponents when they're playing their non-conference schedule, and they were getting the wins. And watching them against Western earlier this year, watching them against UMD, against Denver, you see the games that they played, they were playing really, really well. I think it's something that kind of happens towards the end of the season that we've seen teams get closer, and if you're not absolutely on it every single night, you're going to lose. Because it's everybody's fighting for that home ice at the start of the season, but the fight really isn't now with only just a few weeks left.
Yeah, and it's kind of surprising that we already have 3 teams locked up in to home ice kind of at this point in the season. A lot of times I think last year, it literally came down to the last game to see who was going to fall and pick up those home ice. And it was pretty much none of the seeding for the playoffs was determined until the last night of the playoff or of the regular season. You had Denver and North Dakota tying for first. It could have gone either way. I think Denver ended up as the 1 seed just because of the tie break, but they shared the Penrose. St. Cloud and Minnesota Duluth were fighting to figure out who was going to be number 4, and that came down to
St. Cloud got the tie break.
Yeah, St. Cloud ended up being the 4th team and got bounced in the first round by Minnesota Duluth. I think Western was kind of the only one that was locked in at 3rd, but even then I think that was a little bit of a battle because at one point it could have gone that they could have stolen 2nd or they could have fallen all the way to like 6th or something.
Yeah, I think with 2 weeks to go, because you ended up with 43, St. Cloud ended up with 36, but I think it could even have, if St. Cloud would have swept, and I don't remember what you guys did, but if you wouldn't have,
we swept the last weekend.
Yeah, if you wouldn't have gotten your 6 points in St. Cloud,
and I think St. Cloud won in, I think both of those games like went to overtime or something. Like it was that Minnesota Duluth St. Cloud like 4-game set was extremely important into figuring out the final seeding, and it came and like I think all 4 games were played like overtime or into a shootout or something ridiculous like that. Because I think the two Tuesday games that you guys played, that weird schedule you had there, both of those went to a shootout, and then I think both of the final 2 games either went to overtime or one went to overtime and one went to a shootout. But either way, like nobody got all of the points from either like any of the 4 wins that you guys had.
Yeah, the only game that did not go to overtime was game one. Out of the 6 games that we played St. Cloud last year, was game one of the playoffs, did not go to overtime.
Yeah.
Because game two also went to overtime. And I was like, well, this is just, this is fitting for how this series has gone. So yeah, it is kind of a little bit weirder now having 4 teams locked into home ice.
Three
Well,
team, three
three,
teams. Yeah.
yeah, 3, because we still could catch St. Cloud.
Yeah. Because there's 2 weeks left, 4 games left,
And
12
they're up by
points,
10.
12 points still on the board. Western needs to win out to to potentially win the Penrose Cup for the first time in program history for them. I think it would be like the first time that it hasn't been like Denver, North Dakota, or
St. Cloud.
is it St. Cloud or Minnesota Duluth? I think there's only like 3 teams that have won the Penrose Cup.
We've never won the Penrose.
Okay, so then yeah, it's St. Cloud, Denver, and North Dakota. So it'd be the first time a team out of those 3 had won it if Western's able to accomplish that. And honestly, like it's a top 5 matchup between Western and Denver this weekend, and it's going to be a really good contest. And last weekend was too. I mean, yes, Western was able to pick up the sweep yet again. They've won all 4 games against Colorado College, allowing only 1 goal per game and scoring 4 goals in 3 out of the 4 games that they played against Umberco. But seeing Umberco in person, and my seats are directly behind him for the first and the third period, or not directly, but I'm behind him as he's playing. And the fluidity and the stability that kid plays with is incredible for a freshman, and he's gonna be a pillar on Colorado College for at least a couple more years if he doesn't get snagged by a pro deal before then. And that's something they can build on and build out from. And goaltenders where you kind of want to start building your team, and he's the right guy to do it.
He is, and you can. It's one thing to see it in person, which I haven't seen it in person, but on TV you can tell that he provides that presence and that stability where he just needs the talent on the back end to help him out and to prevent some of those scoring chances. Because as good as he is, if you're not, I mean, it doesn't matter how good of a goalie you are. If the team is giving up chances, you're not going to stop every single shot. You just aren't. But I think building out their defensive court and then adding a little bit more scoring, that'll help them, and that'll help them improve, because he provides that presence in net where they know, okay, Caden's going to be back there.
I think what year is Hunter McCown? I think I want to say he's like a sophomore. I'm probably wrong on that one.
I know he was in the article that I was telling you about, but they didn't say what year he was.
Because he's their biggest threat on the power play for sure. He scored I want to say it was a 5-on-5 goal on the Saturday game. The only goal that they scored on kind of a turnaround shot from the blue line that surprised Cameron, and he really didn't have a play at it. But he's another guy that I think he's going to need to step up more on 5-on-5 and not just be the power play threat that he is. Because if that power play is not going and they can't get the puck to him, there's not a lot that they can really do. Mm-hmm. But we do know that they've been dangerous on the power play all year. But you've got to have more, and you can't 100% rely on just your power play, because there's going to be some teams who don't play a game where they draw a lot of penalties.
Yeah, you might only get 1 or 2 opportunities in a game instead of 4 or 5.
41, there he is. He's a junior, so they might have 1 more year with him, maybe 2. I'm not sure where he falls in that extra year for COVID thing.
Yeah, and I think for him, I think it would be good to come back for his senior year, just to improve his 5-on-5 play and develop a little bit more. Like you just said, he's great on the power play, but
They went,
If you want to move up, you have to be able to score 5-on-5 too.
and there was only 4 penalties called Saturday, 2 aside. Both teams went 0-2 on the power play Saturday night. And Friday, I don't think there were very many called Friday either. Not that I can recall anyway. Each team did get one. But yeah, Western only had 1 power play, which they scored on. And Colorado had, again, 2 opportunities. They did pick up the one, and that was by Stanley Cooley. So, I mean, limiting opportunities like that, teams not taking penalties or refs calling, not calling super tight games like we sometimes see, really limits what they're able to do with a guy like Hunter McCown, who's most dangerous with that extra opportunity of not or someone always being open. So, I mean, if he can develop his 5-on-5 game and become a little bit more of a dangerous player, that definitely enables them to maybe reach a little bit higher scoring percentage and makes them a much more dangerous team.
It does, and if he's able to do that, they say football is the ultimate team game, but hockey is, if it's not up there, it's really damn close because one guy can't win you a game. It's not basketball.
It's not basketball, but it's not football either. Because, I mean, you can have look at the Montreal Canadiens. They had Carey Price carry that team for so long, but they didn't have the offensive production to really make long runs in the playoffs or make the playoffs. They fluked their way into the pod playoffs or the pod Stanley Cup and got absolutely smoked by Tampa Bay. Or look at teams, look how long it took Ovechkin to break through. Like, you have to have a scorer and a goaltender at the very minimum. Like a guy who can keep you in games and a guy who can just put the puck in the net seemingly at will. Those are the teams that are the most successful. It's why Edmonton seems to struggle. They either don't have the goaltending that they need while McDavid goes nuts, or they have decent goaltending, but their offense is shut down because you're just shutting down McDavid and there's not a lot of depth to their scoring.
And I think that's why they're going out, and Draisaitl helps. Draisaitl is also phenomenal, and that's why they're a much better team now because they've added a little more scoring depth. And their goaltending has been pretty decent. But, McCown, he scores 5-on-5. They get a couple games. All of a sudden, they're sitting in 5th, and we're down in 7th. Or North Dakota's in 7th. Minnesota Duluth is in 6th. CC's potentially challenging for that 4th spot, and because they're only 3 points behind us.
Yeah. So, I mean, and even look at the teams that are at the top of the list. You have Western Michigan, who kind of struggled a little bit early with the goaltending situation. Cameron Rowe has come on and played extremely well since the break. He's only really allowed more than 1 goal, I think, once since Christmas, and that was the big game at North Dakota, the 7-6 Western win at North Dakota.
Yeah, that nobody wanted to stop anything anyway.
Yeah, but I think outside of that, every game has been 1-goal games going back to being swept by North Dakota. He allowed 1 goal in each of the GLI games, which either one really could have been a sweep or a shutout. He accidentally put the puck in on himself in the first game, and then misses 1 save in the second game. I think he shuts out North Dakota the first game back. They get to him for 6 the next game. He holds you guys to, I think, 1 goal per game.
I think
or maybe you guys scored
2 on the first. Hang on, let me find it.
But either
because we got 2 in OT and then we were held to 1 because the 1 goal, it was that fluke bounce that went off the glass and hit him in the back.
Yeah. So, I mean, really only 1 goal that game that I would say that he deserved to give up. Another fluke goal gets past him, and not much you can do. It just happens. No. It sucks, but he really only gives up 1 goal there, 1 goal the next night, 1 each night to Colorado College. I mean, you really can't ask for more than what he's giving this offense, and the offense is still what the offense was. not necessarily all coming from that first line, but it shows the scoring depth that Western does have, which makes them so dangerous with Cameron Rowe coming on the way he has for the second half of the year and making the
Mhm.
proper adjustments to playing in the NCHC and facing these high caliber teams week in and week out. And we're sitting in a great spot.
You are, and I mean, that's going to be key going into next week when you're playing a Denver team that just put up 11 goals
And
on a UMD team.
but Denver's struggling a little bit too. I mean, this is not the same uh Magnus Corona that we've seen in years past. Like he seems to have a few more flaws in his game and is giving up a few more goals. I mean, he gave up 8 to Minnesota Duluth on the weekend. He
Mhm.
he was finally scored on by Colorado College after putting up like four to six straight games of shutting them out. Like, I mean, he's seemed almost unbeatable, yet there seems to be some weaknesses to him, and teams are getting to him.
And I
Uh,
think he actually got pulled on,
he gave up.
I'm not 100% sure on Saturday. Let me,
He might have got pulled in on January 20th when they gave up 7 goals to St. Cloud.
let's see here. Yes, he did get pulled after giving up 5 to UMD on Saturday, and that's what I thought. We were hanging out here, and I had the game on upstairs. We were playing games, and all of a sudden I heard Matt Davis was the goalie, and I'm like, who is Matt Davis? Oh, Corona got pulled. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so I mean they might be looking to try to avenge that loss to Duluth, but that was a great hard fought game. That second game, the 6-5 loss, but Western's playing extremely well. I think the thing that might benefit Denver is I believe it's spring break this week. There may not be as many lunatics in the stands as normal. Hopefully they get back in time to make a difference in those games as we know they can. And honestly, I feel like this week is CBS Sports finally has the correct game that they get to call this week. It's the number 1 and number 2 teams in the NCHC. It is number 3 and number 5, depending on which poll you're looking at. It's,
Mm-hmm.
I think, number 3 and number 6 in the pairwise. This might be the biggest game in all of college hockey this weekend. This series, as far as where the teams are in their own conference, where the teams are in the rankings. Um, it has an outside chance at being a potential national championship type game with these two teams.
Just the type series, because Denver does not want to give up that number 1 position, and Western wants it.
But I mean, like, this is a series that these two teams could potentially meet in the national title game in a few weeks. Like, it's not outside the realm of possibilities with the way that these
No.
two teams are playing. I believe Western is one of the hottest teams in the country right now, going 11-1 in their last 12 games. It's gonna be heavy smash mouth hockey which pits two great teams against each other. Western is still the leader as far as offensive production in the country. Uh, Denver is, I think, in a top spot somewhere, but it's the right game to be on that national stage, and I hope a lot of people watch this game and follow along and see what happens.
Yeah, I agree that it is the right game to have. And I think when they scheduled it, they had a feeling that it was going to be, because you look at just past performances and you look at guys that have come back, and Denver lost some big guns, but they still have a lot of talent on that team, and you kind of just expected them to be up near the top, if not at the top, and you expected Western to be in that 2-3 spot,
Uh,
especially. I mean,
A lot of people were expecting Western to be more, I think, lower mid tier this year, just because of what they lost offensively. I don't think anyone was coming out and expecting Jason Poland to have 26 goals with 4 games left in the regular season, and Ryan McAllister to be sitting at 41 points while his production has fallen a little bit. He's no longer the top point getter in the NCAA. The kid still come out and had a phenomenal freshman season, and that line has still produced more than anyone really expected them to, and carried the team for a lot longer than I think a lot of people were expecting them to as well.
well, and I should say I don't necessarily know when they come up with these schedules. I know it has to be a certain time frame in advance because all of a sudden you don't just go, oh, yeah, we're gonna go do this game
Yeah.
on this weekend. But
I know they
if
generally
it,
want to get to every spot and have every school uh, involved.
mm-hmm.
So they want to be everywhere at least once and have every team on the calendar at least once. But I'm just saying, like, as far as like how it matched up, this was incredible. You know, I mean, last week they had uh, Denver. Was it Denver, Colorado College last weekend?
No, they had
Was
was it?
No, it was North Dakota St. Cloud was the Friday game
That's
on
right.
CBS
Yeah,
Sports, and the week before that was North Dakota Denver. So I mean, they had Denver back to back weeks, or North Dakota back to back weeks
back weeks,
in
and
Denver
then
and at North Dakota, and they have, you know, Denver's been on 3 times in, or 2 times in the last
Denver's
3 weeks.
they're gonna be on um 4 times because they also have the last series against Colorado College is CBS Sports Network. So they're loving Denver a little bit
But
too
Denver's
much,
the
but
the defending
they
national title. I mean, that's the
exactly,
national defending championship team. You're going to put
exactly,
them on there.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. Like I don't disagree with it. I'm what I like to see, other teams, yeah, but I don't disagree with
I think
that
they were
option.
better. They were closer. But I mean, you're looking at that. And you go North Dakota, Denver, one of the most storied rivalries in college hockey. You're not expecting North Dakota to be a 6, 7, 8 team in the conference.
No.
You're putting that one on the schedule because of the history of those two teams, and it makes perfect sense to do it. I'm just saying, like, but at the end of when that matchup came up, we were like, really, this is the matchup, and it was a
Mm-hmm.
5-3 game, or
But earlier in the year, we're like, ooh, that would be, and it ended up being a lot more entertaining than I thought it was going to be.
yeah, and even last week, a lot of people were like, oh, it's St. Cloud at North Dakota. Again, it's two teams that have played each other a lot. It's two pretty storied uh, programs in college hockey. That one ends up being like a legit banger of a game. It's a 4-3 overtime win for North Dakota, and that was still, you know, St. Cloud's been was still, I think, a top 5 team at the time. So,
Mm-hmm.
but there were other matchups that you thought might have produced a better game because they were closer teams. I mean, I might have, granted, it ended up winning out, but you know, the Denver Duluth game, the rematch from the the CCHA or the NCHC championship last year, that would have been, or the semifinals, that would have been a good game
Yeah.
to watch. Uh, I think they ended up. Didn't you guys play each other in the tournament too?
Yeah, that was the 1-0 game in the regional finals.
Yeah. So I mean,
Um,
like there's story arc between those two teams that could have made for just as good of a matchup on CBS Sports. But this one feels like it's definitely the biggest game on the weekend, on the biggest platform on the weekend. It's not going to be on local channels. It's not going to be NCHC.TV only. It's the national broadcast. It's a game with some pretty big implications as far as how the seeding could go for the rest of the tournament, or, you know, some of the seeding for who could potentially win the Penrose, who could potentially be a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament.
mhm.
Like there's a lot of stuff coming into this game, and it deserves the attention that it we're getting from it, I think.
Yeah, and to hear Dave Starman just go absolutely gaga over these two teams, that'll be fun to listen to. I get to listen to it. You will actually get to be there.
I get to take my daughter to the game all by myself.
How long did she? How long did you guys stay?
Oh,
How good was she?
we stayed the whole game. She slept the whole game. Uh, made a pit stop for a diaper change. So that was awesome. Seeing a grown man with face paint change a very tiny baby on a baby changing
There
table.
were there were probably some new people that walked in and they did the old Simpsons bit. You walk in the door and just walk out and go find a
You know, it was definitely an experience that I do not regret taking, and I would have taken a million times over. And in fact, I'm doing it all by myself this weekend. So we'll
I
give
wish you luck.
we'll give mom a little break from the baby
And you.
and me, and she'll have her little baby headphones, and she'll be adorable again. It'll be great.
Um
Let's see.
so
Players of the week. For the first time, we have 4 teams represented across the board. Jack Devine is your forward of the week from a sophomore from Denver. Johnny Tyconic, the graduate student from Omaha, is the defenseman of the week. Rookie of the week was Ben Steves, forward from Minnesota Duluth. And picking up his 5th goaltender of the week award, junior from Western Michigan University, Cameron Rowe. So, I mean, all well-deserved award recipients. Once again, you kind of have to give... Goaltending was a little bit easier of a pick this week.
mm-hmm.
As the only team to sweep. He also allowed the least amount of goals on the weekend at 2.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think this is the first week in quite a few, or maybe the second week in quite a few, where it's been an easy choice.
Well, I
Where
mean, there's also the couple weeks where
the
only
lean
2
weeks.
teams played, or 4 teams played.
There's the lean weeks, and then you have the guys splitting, but someone gets a shutout, but they don't play the second game, but you give them goaltender of the week because they got the shutout. This one, it wouldn't have mattered. I think this was Cam is who I would have picked. Like you said, giving up 2 goals on the weekend, getting the sweep. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, really without a shutout, he's kind of the runaway. Everyone else either split their series or gave up enough goals that you had to go to overtime.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it is what it is, but no, congratulations to him once again. He's leading the conference in Goalie of the Week awards with 5. I'll take that anytime. And we're in a good spot coming in. Like I said, he's been playing extremely well since the team got swept by North Dakota in December. We look like a completely different team. We were without a big threat on our power play this weekend, and looks like we will continue to be without him at least for a little bit, as Jamie Rome sustained some sort of an injury, a lower body injury of some sort. He was limping around the arena on Friday and Saturday night. I don't think he's expected to be back this week. I'm not entirely sure of a timeline there. Western does not get the greatest hockey news, unlike some. I think really the only school that does a great job of putting out consistent hockey-only news is North Dakota, partly because that's their sport, and they have a dedicated reporter for their local paper. But they were also without Carter Berger, who has come in from the University of Connecticut and been a staple on that Western Michigan blue line. There was some mixed matching of defensive partners for Aiden Fulp this weekend. I'm not sure when the injuries came in, but if it was something that happened late in the week, this week might be able to get him a more stable goal defense partner, and you get to work with them all week, as opposed to if the injury came early Friday or Thursday, not as much time to get together. So they were kind of fitting pieces where they could defensively. The offense was what the offense was. Guys stepped up. Poland had 2 goals on Friday. We only needed 2 goals on Saturday. They came from different players. So, I mean, we're seeing that the team depth is still there. It'll be, those guys got to continue to step up and fill in spots where guys are out. But it's by no means a disastrous situation. And if you want to win a national championship, like, it's going to take guys making the most of opportunities when unfortunate things like injuries occur. So we'll see how the team looks this weekend, and it'll be a big test, and it'll really show where this team is going into the later part of the regular season and into playoffs.
I'm trying to find that article that I was telling you about, just because I did want to note some NHL or NCHC players, but while I'm looking for this, we can just go over quick the remaining series that we haven't talked about.
My coming up, or that were this weekend?
Yeah, coming up.
Okay, so Miami flying to Minnesota Duluth. It could be an interesting one. Miami has done some very interesting things this the last few weeks, going to overtime in, I think, 3 out of their 4 last games, 2 shootouts against St. Cloud, another overtime game against Omaha. It's, I don't know what that team is at this point. I don't even think they know what they are at this point.
Either.
It could be a good step for Duluth to keep things, keep building on that win they had against Denver. And they can make some noise. I mean, we saw them really not too far out of where they were last year. They're still in that 4th, 5th spot that they were in last year. It's going to be harder to steal that number 4 home ice spot, but they won the conference tournament from the 5th seed, where they're at right now. So I don't really see them in full panic mode, but these are games that you have to win with a team that's been struggling the way Miami has.
Against a team that only has 10 points, you have to win this series if you want to have any hope of
at least giving, I mean, I don't even really know that they have a chance in an at-large bid at this point, but at least giving yourself a shot. I think their way in is the way it was last year to win the NCHC tournament.
I think so. The only difference between last year's team and this year's team, I still think we could have gotten an at-large bid. I think we were right there. It was close, but I had way more confidence in last year's team than I do this year's team with how they've played all year. Because with how close we were to St. Cloud, I think in the pairwise we were also right in there.
But yeah, I mean, those are games that you have to win with the way Miami's struggling. They have 10 points all season in the NCHC standings. They've only won 2 games. They're 2-15-3. I mean, Western's got them after you guys to wrap up the NCHC regular season. And so, I mean, depending on how this weekend goes, that could be a matchup that Western really, really wants to win too, and could be the determining factor for the Penrose. So anything's really possible. Like I said, Miami's played some teams tough. They just haven't been able to finish games. They don't have a lot of scoring outside of maybe 1 or 2 players. Larson can't do everything, or not. Yeah. Pearson can't do everything by himself in net. He definitely needs some help. And Duluth is been on, and they scored 8 goals last weekend against Denver, a team that's generally kind of hard to score on. If they can keep their offensive production up, they still have a chance, because
Hmm.
St. Cloud plays Omaha, those two teams 3 and 4 battling for every point. Uh, it might be a chance for St. Cloud can hold Omaha up a little bit, or if Omaha holds St. Cloud up a little bit, it could be a chance for Minnesota Duluth to sneak in there. That should be a pretty good game. Omaha's been playing extremely well here the second half of the season. And St. Cloud's been on a little bit of a slide. I think it's two teams that are doing this, meeting at potentially
Hmm.
right here, and could go either way. Um,
I do think that should be an entertaining series just because of, like you said, the trajectories that they're on. St. Cloud's trying to right the ship. They're listing pretty hard, and Omaha, they have pretty smooth sailing right now. So it's going to be.
but Omaha still needs help to make up for their weaker non-conference schedule to really solidify themselves a place in the NCAA tournament.
They do. Um, but I think if if they can position themselves to get a good seed and then do well in the conference tournament, that might help them, but
We'll talk about that when we
we'll
get
see.
there. I have things to say about Omaha as far as the conference tournament goes, since they want to. Some of their peoples want to point fingers at certain institutions for belonging in the NCHC. We'll see how that goes. And the final matchup is North Dakota at Colorado College. Colorado College might want their sixth spot back. North Dakota jumped them. There's 1 point separating these two teams. I think Colorado College has a little bit stronger goaltending in Emberko than North Dakota does in DeRitter. I think Colorado College has been a little bit more consistent in their play. We've seen North Dakota have some really high ups and some really low lows and not be able to maintain much of anything. I mean, they were up like, I want to say like 5-3 in that Western game, and Western stormed back to win 7-6.
Yeah, I think that's what it was because I was watching that one too. Um, I think it does help Colorado College that they're at home. Um, I just like on the website, it has Kalamazoo, like for the location, Kalamazoo, Duluth, Omaha, home. They didn't even put Colorado Springs, it's just
Yeah.
home. So thankfully they're under the home team, but just too much writing, even though we wanted to spell Kalamazoo, just home.
Yeah. Uh, so definitely, I mean, that series could really go either way. I think North Dakota's coming off is in a little bit happier of a place, seeing as they won their last game. Or no, they lost in the shootout. St.
They
Cloud
lost in the
won
shootout,
their last
but
game, but Colorado College is also coming off a sweep, and they still want to say that, like, we're playing good hockey. We can win games.
mm-hmm. And I think it helps a little bit North Dakota that it's St. Cloud, a team that was higher up in the standings, that they're like, okay, yeah, we won one, we lost in the shootout, but we're playing pretty good, and they're gonna look
Ooh.
at Colorado College. They got swept, but I don't think Colorado College thinks that they should have gotten swept.
Ooh. So Dan brings up an interesting topic for discussion that we could have, seeing as we're only about 45 minutes in here. So if, depending on how this shakes out, we could potentially have a first round rematch of every series from the final regular season finales. If Western somehow manages to steal first place from Denver, they would play Miami. If Denver falls to second and Colorado stays at 7, I'm sorry, Denver and
Yeah.
Colorado College would play. Omaha stays at third and North Dakota stays at sixth. They would play each other. And if St. Cloud stays 4 and Duluth stays 5, they would play each other. Or if those two switched. But Western would have to get to that number 1 spot, and everyone else would kind of have to stay where they are. and it would be a rematch from the finals, the final week of the regular season into the first round of the playoffs, which would be honestly interesting storyline wise, and would be interesting to see how the playoffs would shake out. You're essentially making that a 5-game series, a 7-game series, with a week break in between. I mean, you're not, but you are.
Yeah.
Because everyone would look at those 5 games, those 5 games, and go,
5, yeah,
and go, ooh, what would happen if it was a 5-game set in the playoffs?
Well, and I do like the fact that what happened last year with UMD and St. Cloud, that just made it that much better, in my opinion, that we had just played them. We battled hard trying to get that home ice, trying to determine that seeding, and then we had to play them right again the next weekend. And that there was, maybe some bad blood, maybe some more intensity in that series where, okay, yeah, we played you close, we lost when we won one. We have to fight even harder now. And I think that would, especially some of these series, I think it would make for some really good hockey, especially with how close some of these teams seemingly are, even though they might not be that way in the standings.
Yeah. It would be so cool to see. And then Dan says, I really hope to watch Western win the Penrose in Miami in 2 weeks, as he'll be at the game. And but we got to beat Denver first, and that's the big step, is getting past. I mean, we don't necessarily have to sweep Denver. We do need at least one win, because we can win and then take an OT win, and we would tie them, and then it would kind of shake out how the last weekend would go. The last weekend favors us a little bit, but they've also had a great success against Colorado College too. So
yeah,
really, you just want to win the games ahead of you, and keep it in your own hands and not depend on other people to play out your destiny, and go from there. It's a team that can do it. I also don't know. I wanted to get into this more later, but because Western's so close to winning, or has a real shot at the Penrose again this season, winning the Penrose is nice and everything, but it is not a great predictor for success in the tournament. Whether it's the NCAA tournament or the NCHC tournament, as no team that has won the Penrose of the 3 that have won it have gone on to win the conference tournament.
Sorry about it.
Now there are Penrose champions who have gone on to win the national title after winning the Penrose and not the conference tournament. And there are conference tournament winners who have gone on to win the national tournament. So who knows?
I think I just think the conference is so good that it doesn't really matter. It's like the President's Trophy in the NHL. How many times has the winner of the President's Trophy actually won the Stanley Cup? It doesn't happen that often, but then obviously more divisions, like divisions winners. And
I think what you can say is, if you win the Penrose Cup, you're gonna have an at-large bid in the national tournament. I think at this point that's pretty safe to say. I believe that stat has carried on every year that the NCHC has been a thing, that at least the Penrose winner has been in the national tournament, and not because of the automatic bid from winning the conference championship. So there's that. It would be nice to be amongst the few teams who have won the Penrose, and it would also be nice to be amongst the few teams who have won the Frozen Faceoff. It would be
Sorry
nice
about it.
to add another trophy to the trophy case. But I mean, I think the end result for any team when you look at the beginning of the year is to raise that big one, the national title. And there's a potential for the team to do it. And yeah, everyone thought last year's team was good. I think a lot of people just weren't sure what this Western team was going to be, losing the number of players that we did and having to rely quite heavily on the transfer portal, maybe more so than Coach Frischweiler was expecting to have to or really wanting to have to. But he's done a great job putting this team together. Um, Jason Poland is our captain is the only guy from his freshman class that stayed.
Mm-hmm.
2 signed pro deals, 1 transferred out. We had two guys stay as grad students or 5th-year seniors, that being Jamie Rome and Cole Gallant. And I think those 3 guys have been a major part of the success that we're seeing and being that consistency and helping bring the new guys into the fold and being leaders that you want in the locker room and it showing up on the ice too as they're big contributors to our success on score sheets every weekend.
I did find the article, and so I just want to go over that quick, just to give shout outs to the guys from
One
the
second,
NCHC. Okay.
because Dan's got a question here. I'm not sure about Berger. He looked. I don't know that I saw him at the games this weekend. Rome was not in a legit boot from what I saw on the weekend. He was in his regular shoes. I believe he may have had a soft cast on, but was walking rather gingerly. I don't think Rome's going to be back this weekend. Maybe if everything goes okay and it's not as bad as it looked, maybe first round of the playoffs potentially. I've also heard that he may be out for the season, so I can't really say too much on that. Again, Western gets very little information out, but I can say from firsthand knowledge that he was not in a boot. He was in regular dress shoes and socks, but may have had some sort of soft cast Friday and was just gingerly walking Saturday. And then, like I said, I have no idea as far as Berger's condition, whether it was an upper body, lower body, or they were pulling an Andy Murray and it was a hand injury, but calling it a lower body injury, which is still one of my favorite Andy Murray stories. I'm so glad we heard that from, I think, Trevor.
Yeah, it was Trevor.
But so just to hit on that for as Dan brought it up in the comments there. So on to your article, good sir.
Yes, so this is from Corey Pronman, and I do think he's just going from guys that could be potential NHL free agents, and he covers top college, Canadian Hockey League, and European free agents, and he splits them into 3 groups. Projected to play NHL games, and there are some college players, but none from the NCHC. Then have a chance to play NHL games, and I think this is assuming that they sign this year. I don't necessarily agree with how he has it broken out, but that changed. And then long shots to play, and in the have a chance to play NHL games, there's Reese Gaber from North Dakota, and then Hunter McCown from Colorado College. Those are the top 2 NCHC players that are in this list, and then going down into the long shots to play in the NHL, and he just has them listed by number. We have, where is he? Come on, Jason Poland is number 24. Max Sasson is number 28. Ryan McAllister, number 29. And I thought there was one more, but then he also has Dominic Bassi and Magnus Corona listed as other players that could be signed as free agents from the NCHC this year. Poland is probably the one that would be most likely to go. Um, I don't know if Max or Ryan would necessarily leave early, but I just thought it was kind of an interesting article, and he breaks down his thoughts on each player that he's watched so far this year.
So yes, I think of those guys listed, Poland is probably the most likely to leave. I don't think he's going to come back for a fifth year. I mean, he really has nothing left to prove. The kid made incredible strides. I think his next developmental stages will really be at the pro ranks, whether that's signing an AHA deal or AHL deal or an ECHL deal. He could have a very similar success to his end of career like Ethan Frank did last year. There's talks that, talks amongst the world of hockey that Ethan should be looking at an NHL type deal at the end of this year, just so that he may end up getting a look, because I think he's only signed to an AHL deal at the moment. So he can really either go down to the ECHL or play at the AHL, unless the NHL team either signs him to a professional tryout or they sign him to some sort of two-way deal type situation. But he's played himself into that position with his play in the AHL this year. Jason's a pretty similar caliber player. They're different. They have different styles of play. Ethan, we saw the speed that he's capable of unleashing. He holds the record in the AHL for the fastest skater. Potentially would have the record in the NHL as well if he had skated in their contest. First player to go sub 13 around the rink. I don't know that Jason necessarily has that kind of speed, but he has the same scoring prowess. He can score from a bunch of different places. He's strong. He's really good in the defensive end. We saw more of his defensive play this weekend, especially in the Saturday game, blocking shots, playing hard in his own zone, trying to lead to those offensive opportunities that Western's really good at, getting on the breakaway. There's, as good as Ryan McAllister has been as a freshman, I see a lot to his game that can develop. And I don't know that there's really a need to take a risk. But yes, you want to make money. Everyone wants to make money.
Mm-hmm.
The way I'm putting this is not to belittle his ability to earn financially from his talents. I think he's a very talented player. I think at some point someone is going to pay him a lot of money to play hockey at some level. Hopefully the highest level. But I think there's less of a risk to his health and safety to play at least one more, if not two more years at the college level. Enjoy college. It's a less rigorous schedule. You can develop your skills against guys who are still older than you, still bigger than you, but who aren't relying on a paycheck and aren't willing to put you through the wall to earn their name and their keep. I think his shot still needs to develop a little bit. He was, or has been this season, very pass first minded, and I think playing with a coach like Coach Ferschweiler, Coach Crew, Coach Herder, could really still benefit him and help him to develop into a more all-around player and more of a dynamic threat. Because if you have the ability to shoot and score, guys are going to be looking at that, and then with his ability to pass and find places to pass to, it's only going to make his passing better to be a legit shooting threat as well.
Absolutely.
And I think Max is kind of in a similar boat to Ryan. I think he still has a little bit to go on his progression. He's only a sophomore. He's getting first team reps as far as facing off with the other team's best centers in the conference. He could potentially be one of the better centers in the conference next year or the year after having faced all those top guys for all of this season as a younger player. He has the ability to score. He plays a really good game. Um, and I'm not trying to say that like I don't know I don't know shit about college hockey. I'll tell you that. I know what I see.
Mm-hmm.
I know how players look, and I'm not trying to be selfish because I'm a Western fan and say that I want these guys here at Western for as long as we can have them. Yes, it's great, and I would like that because they make the team better. But I think there's still potentially parts of their game that you could see progressing and not quite being at a level. And I don't want it to cost them anything. There's a lot of players who take steps too early and it ends up not being what they thought it would be, or they don't necessarily end up in a place that they thought they would end up in, and they lose the chance to really go back and develop at the rate they should have.
And I know I've said it before, and just recently because we've talked about this, but Casey Middlestad, he is a perfect example of this. I just looked up his stats right now. He was the 8th overall pick in 2017. He's been up and down with the Buffalo Sabres, and he probably is the best high school hockey player I've ever seen play live. Currently, in 249 games, he has 42 goals, 113 points, and he's a minus 60. Now, this is Buffalo. This year, he's got 9 goals, 33 points, and is minus 13. This kid was the 8th overall pick in the draft. Best offensive player I've seen. He did a little bit of juniors. He went 1 year at the University of Minnesota and then went straight to the pros. He needed more than 1 year, but they inflated his ego, and that's also the difference though too of what all these guys have is they weren't drafted high. They weren't expected. They didn't feel the pressure to go and sign right away. So they can take their time to develop, and it's like, you know what? If I don't go this year and I can get a little better, I can probably make some more money next year. And if you do a third year, you can get a little more money because you're going to be a better player. And yeah, I want them, any kid that signs, I want them to do well because that's their dream. That's what they want to do. But if you can take your time and you don't have this pressure of being drafted, or you think you have this pressure, which you really don't, um, then take that time to develop and get the best deal you possibly can.
I mean, since we've been fans of hockey, there's been one Alexander Ovechkin, one Sidney Crosby, and one Connor McDavid.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. There's been, you know, 55 Damian Bruners. I mean, if you know the league and you're paying attention, you know exactly who I'm talking about. A guy who potentially had one great season, played himself up in his own head, and played his way back to playing in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
If he's even still playing. Um, it's not gonna work the same way for everybody. And there's no real reason to rush it. Because yes, I mean, the nice thing about hockey is that there is a level to professional hockey. There are levels. It's not the NFL or what the NBA was, where you have one shot at a really, really good league. Otherwise, you're playing somewhere weird
Mm-hmm.
for significantly less money, but you get to call yourself a professional hockey player. I think the KHL is really good hockey. There's guys that have a ton of success over there. There's guys that make a life out of playing in Sweden. There's guys that make an entire career out of playing in the ECHL. There's players who make a ton of, or have a hell of a career playing in the AHL, and maybe only get called up in mass injury situations, or they might play well enough to earn a look here and there. But they have an incredible career, and I don't think they would change that career for anything. But not everyone
It,
is meant to be an NHL player, and that's just how it is.
mm-hmm. And I will say, I was just thinking of him, um, because I know he wasn't one and done. Zach Parise, one of the best American goal scorers of all time. He played a second season at North Dakota, and then he went and he played a full season in the AHL, and then moved up. That second season doesn't necessarily hurt you. It could if you got hurt, but we hope that doesn't happen to anybody. But you could get hurt in any game that you play, so it's like, well, what do you do? You could make it to the NHL and get hurt your first game. You could not make it at all and um, get hurt at a certain point. I just think not doing the one and done in hockey makes sense because you can develop, and that's why they have the 3-year rule for football, for NCAA to the NFL, because you're going up against so many like grown men, and you need to develop. You need those 3 years to develop.
You can play grown men in college hockey. There's dudes who are 25 years old their senior year
Oh
playing.
yeah,
You're coming in at 21. I mean, it's no worse than playing in the ECHL, honestly. In fact, there might be some games that are closer talent wise and competition wise than some games in the ECHL. That's not to take a dig at the ECHL by any means. I think they play within their rule set and they make the most of the fact that there's only one referee on the ice from time to time, and it's an interesting way to play in hockey. That's all I'm trying to say there. But sometimes I've seen more competitive, better games played at the college level than I have at the ECHL level.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen better AHL games than I've seen NHL games, to be completely honest about it sometimes. But there's no real reason to rush it. And we see players, Jordan Binnington, Stanley Cup champion for the St. Louis Blues, played just down the road from me in the ECHL as part of the Kalamazoo Wings. He traveled every level of hockey and won the Stanley Cup. It's not
Scott Darling played in the SPHL.
Yeah.
Like he went even lower than the ECHL. And he made it and got a ring playing with the Blackhawks.
You can't look at how other people develop and say that that's going to be you in whatever years. You have to take the development as it comes and play your own game and not. But again, there's no real reason to rush it. I think enjoy where you're at. If you're having a great time playing with your friends and only playing at most 40 games a season, play 40 games a season for a couple years and hang out with your buddies. You know, go to class, get a degree, something to fall back on. It doesn't make sense to rush it and then look back and go, well, I'm stuck in the AHL. I wonder if maybe if I had played one more year of college, if I could have hit the NHL, because I would have had time to work with that training coach one more season and get a little bigger. And now I have to pay for my own nutritionist and pay for my own training coach and pay for this and pay for that. I don't know, maybe.
And I will say this about for the most part, it all depends on the kid to listen to the coaching staffs and the people that are around him. But you're going to that school for a reason, and the coaches are there, yes, to win games and to win national championships, but they're also there to help you get to the next level at these schools. And they just want the best for you. So they might tell you, you can't do a whole lot more here. Go on and move up. I think you're ready to move up, or stay back for another year. We can work on this, and we'll get you better. Take that into consideration. There are guys that still leave after 1 year. Middlestad, we already knew he was going to leave after 1 year. Kaz Koskisuo, the goalie for UMD, he played 1 year as a freshman. I think he didn't even have time for a cup of coffee in the NHL. He was mostly in the AHL, and then he faded out real fast, and now he's playing overseas because he rushed it. and
I
he
wonder, I
didn't give
wonder,
himself time to develop.
I wonder if LaFontaine would have stayed. Looking back on his year last year, I wonder if he's thinking he should have stayed the rest of last year at Minnesota. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the team that had a shot at a national title. They might have been able to win it with LaFontaine. Instead, he signs at Christmas to the NHL Carolina Hurricanes because they're so desperate for a goaltender that they pluck their signee out of, or their draftee out of the college ranks, and he's not with the NHL team anymore. I'm not sure where he's at. I think he might have been in Chicago at one point or somewhere. Um,
Yeah. No, now I gotta look that up.
yeah, that's the situation. And if you're a college player that somehow managed, or a high school player or juniors player who somehow manages to stumble upon this, by no means are we experts in the world of college hockey. I think we watch enough of it to understand enough to make us to hurt ourselves.
Yeah.
But just because a school has a lot of guys who are drafted to the NHL does not mean they're necessarily turning out NHL talent outside of that. Like, those dudes are looked at before they get to those teams. And then there's other teams that develop players who weren't drafted. And honestly, Western Michigan has done a great job of this. Coach Frischweiler has done a great job of this back when he was an assistant coach here. I mean, Danny DeKaiser went from being an undrafted free agent to a 10-year NHL vet with the team that he grew up watching. And I think his first games, he literally went straight to the NHL. I don't think he actually spent any time in the AHL for development. I think he might have spent time there because of injuries. But his first games were playoff run games, meaningful games for the Red Wings. Wade Allison, he was a guy who was drafted. He had to spend a couple years at the AHL level. He's finally getting his chance with the Flyers. There's been a long list of defensive guys who've come out of Western. Matthias Samuelsson is getting a real chance with the Buffalo Sabres. He was a guy who was drafted but left after 2 years and had to spend 2 years in the AHL level, 2 or 3. I mean, he's finally getting. I think they signed him to a long extension, but this is really the first year he's playing real meaningful NHL minutes. So, and those two different guys, two different careers. Matthias Samuelsson drafted by the Sabres, left after 2 years, had to spend a couple of years in the AHL. Danny DeKaiser, undrafted, free agent. I think he left after his 3rd year, went straight to the NHL and never really looked back. And you could say, well, maybe they're going to be different players. Maybe Matthias is going to have a completely different year than Danny DeKaiser did, but DeKaiser played 10 years in the NHL.
Mm-hmm. And,
was an undrafted guy.
The other thing too, UMD, you have to look at the programs and their history of undrafted guys too. Especially if you aren't drafted, like you were saying, Western has done a great job of undrafted guys. UMD, I don't know how many guys get signed after the season is done to just even AHL contracts.
Yeah.
Which I'm saying only AHL contracts, but NHL teams pick them up. Or guys that are drafted, like a Scotty Perunovich, he stayed for 3 years because he knew that it's going to be more beneficial to him. He didn't want to rush it. Now, he's constantly hurt, but he can't necessarily help that. But he still played. He was a year in the AHL, kind of up and down, and then he was up with the team, got hurt, came back, played in the playoffs, and he got hurt again, and now he's out. But there's 2 different paths, but I think you definitely have to look at how the record of players that are undrafted that go in there that are, because those coaching staffs and those schools, they're going to help you get to where you want to be versus a certain team in your state that is like Kentucky basketball and they just want the one and dones and the high draft picks, because that's not how the world works.
No.
If you want to get to where you are, and they work out, you look at how many of them work out. Not a whole lot of one and dones really work out in the NBA level. Um, it's you need to work and develop your game because each level is different than the next or than the last.
100%. Um, I think that'll about do it though, and we're ending in a good spot. And look at how players progress throughout their time at a university. You know, Wade Ellison's a guy who had a lot of injuries, but he stayed 4 years and it's working out great for him. He's apparently really loved by the Philadelphia Flyers locker room and organization. He's getting some really good opportunities, scoring some goals. Ethan Frank, he got better every year he was here. He's crushing it at the AHL level. And he's leading all AHL rookies with goals and like leading his team with points and or near the top of his own team in points. He's become a hell of a hockey player, uh, and showing that he had the talent all along, and it just took a little bit to get out of him, but he's developed into a great player. Um, has a chance to be an NHLer for somebody somewhere. Um, it's all over the conference. It's all over each of these teams, and no matter what, I'm going to enjoy watching Western play, whether you're a top pick or a kind of surprise story out of nowhere like Ryan McAllister was. So, well, it won't bother me none who you are and what your background is, as long as you step on the ice and do your best and you don't try to out talent everybody. I think you'll be just fine.
Yeah, and if you know, with Wade, if you get Torts to like you, holy shit, you're doing something right.
And that's another dude whose progression you should really pay attention to at Western, even through all the injuries. Um, I've said it numerous times, and I'm not afraid to say it. And if he ever hears me say it, cool, I'll say it to him too. Like when he first got here, I think he was much more of an all talent guy. I think somewhere along the way, whether it was the injuries and rehabbing from the injuries, or the relationships he developed with the other players, that made it so he wanted to stay for a fourth year or a fifth year. I don't remember which one he ended up. I think he stayed for a fourth year. That made him want to stay. He became a different player. He became a guy who worked hard and out muscled people and won puck battles and still could score ridiculous lacrosse style goals against Miami in the last game of the regular season and attempt to do it in the playoffs. The talent doesn't go away just because you learn to work hard. It just makes the hard work mean more because you can use the talent when you need it, but you rely on the hard work first.
Mm-hmm.
So
The hard work makes the talent pay off more because you've given yourself more opportunities for that talent to shine through.
exactly. So development comes in a lot of different ways. It doesn't necessarily just mean you'll go from a scoring once every 3 games to every single game, but it might give you an opportunity to have looks every single game as opposed to really only having a look 1 out of every 4 games. But yeah, I think we're going to end it there. I think we had a pretty good talk all in all about the weekend that was, the weekend that will be, and college hockey in general. I had fun. Hope you had fun. Big weekends coming up. We're getting close to the end of the regular season. Excited to see what happens as far as tournaments go. Excited to see what the offseason is going to look like because we do have a line on a couple cool guests for the offseason. I'm also going to try and reach out to a couple former guests and see if they're willing to come back on. We'll have some different discussions in the offseason than we have in the past. We'll still try and do similar to what we did last season. Look at all the teams, see who left, see who stayed. Look at schedules as they come per school. But we'll try and mix in some just general college hockey talk too, I think, to make the offseason a little more palatable. As always, we're always looking for more topics, more information. So if you have any information that you think would be beneficial to us, the email is going across the screen now. You can send it there. You can also tag us on something on Twitter. Our personal handles are below our faces. Mine's there. Mike's is over that way somewhere. Nope, over that way. I don't know. It's over somewhere. He's to one of those screens. It's below him. There's There's also a combined Twitter handle that will be scrolling across the screen momentarily because it's stupid and hard to spell out, and I don't want to. So we'll wait for it to go by. There it is. Here it comes. There it goes. There's that. If you feel so inclined, leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe if you want to. If you don't want to, that's cool.
Call us names, it's fine.
We're gonna do this every week anyway because we enjoy it, even if it's just for ourselves. We appreciate Dan once again stopping in and leaving some great questions that led to some great talking points. Definitely appreciate that.
Thank you, Dan, very much.
Have fun next weekend in Miami. We'll probably bring that up again next week when we talk about that. Good luck to everybody playing this weekend, unless you're Denver and you can afford to not pick up 6 points in the standings. That'd be great. If you want to go ahead and just leave your sticks at home again, coming to Kalamazoo, do it. For those who don't know, Denver once traveled to Kalamazoo and left a bunch of their equipment in Kalamazoo because they couldn't fit it on the plane, or there wasn't enough weight restriction to the plane. Something weird happened, and they showed up with like none of their crap other than their players and like maybe their players' clothes. Hilarious. So if you all want to do that again, do it.
Or just get stuck in Minneapolis again and have to drive all the way up.
Have to bus it. Hey, they swept that weekend, so maybe that's the plan. Maybe land in Chicago and drive from Chicago.
Well, it was North Dakota.
But no, good luck to everybody playing. We want to keep injuries minimum. We want everyone to give it their all and be healthy so we can have great games.
Clevin, don't try to get another suspension.
Or do and set a record.
Yeah, we actually don't care.
Records are meant to be broken. Can you break that one? No, seriously, don't. Stop breaking the rules, guy. But I think there's only one thing left to say. Pucks on net, good things happen, like goal horns and fight songs. So until the next episode, have a good one. We will talk to you later. Enjoy this thing that's coming up on the screen next. Bye-bye.